Hello and welcome to a very special edition of Sports Wrap. I am Frank Walsh along with my friend and co-host Michael Wigdor. And this is a very special show because Michael and I have now reached our 350th Sports Wrap show. So kudos to us on that. And it is also special because we have a very special guest. He is someone who has been on the show before. He is all things Patriots. If you want to know the most minute statistic about the Patriots, this guy can give it to you. So rather than me talk about him, let's bring him on and he'll talk about himself. So it gives Mike and I great pleasure to introduce to you Mr. Bob Hyldburg. Hey, Bob, welcome aboard.
Hey, welcome. Thanks for having me on this special show. 350.
First of all, congratulations on your new book. You are once again an author. Yes. And it is called
Relive Patriots History.
Relive Patriots History. So I think that's a good segue to relive a little bit about the game this past Sunday. So, Mikey, what's your take on this last game? Was it a little surprising or what?
It was. I sat down and I expected. I had talked to Bob earlier, actually before the game, and both of us were very negative and thought they were going to get blown out. And I'm sitting down there, expecting it to be exactly that. And it's just the way it unfolded and the way the Patriots actually pushed them around instead of them pushing us around. It was amazing to see, even though the weather was bad. But, I mean, our ground game pounded the Ravens, and they didn't expect that because the Ravens are one team that hate us as much as we hate them, and they are never intimidated by us. And secondly, they have Lamar Jackson, who was the MVP last year. But for them to come out with a win, 23-17, was shocking. So from now on, I am not predicting any more games for the Patriots. Nothing. Don't even ask me what's going to be because all the experts, just like Bob and I, predicted blowouts. They didn't think the Patriots had a chance.
Yeah, I didn't either.
It's just really surprising. But the ground game and the defense was awesome. And this new kid, Damien Harris, is an incredible runner. And let's just hope he stays healthy and continue to do the same things for us.
What's your take, Bob?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things I look at a game is who's going to make the fewest mistakes and who's going to win the line of scrimmage.
Right.
And, you know, we didn't really have much of an offensive line until recently. And then with David Andrews and those guys coming back and, you know, surprising right off the bat, we just kind of ran it right up their gut, you know. And when that happens, you know, the defense is probably going to keep us in the game unless, you know, we make mistakes, and we've had a tendency of making some mistakes, especially later in the game. But I was surprised right off the bat that we just ran it right down their throat. And right. I mean, this Harris kid is averaging 5.5 yards a carry, which is amazing. He's just taking off and just bowling people over, which is what you love to see.
Yeah. I know they were, certainly favored. What was the spread on that game? Like 10, 11? I mean, it was a pretty high spread on that game. I don't think anybody was picking the Patriots to win that game.
Not much. I mean, I don't know if it was that high. It might have come down a little bit in the end. And of course, the rain had something to do with it.
Right.
You know, the Patriots are going to be in it if it's a low scoring game, you know.
Yeah.
And one of the things that you see about Lamar Jackson, he doesn't have a tendency of coming back. So if we go up and we score early, that's, you know, that usually helps the team that is the underdog in this case.
Right. And Mike and I talked a little bit before the game, and one of the things historically, the Patriots have been very good bad weather teams. And then I was thinking that Baltimore, they don't have the best weather either. But what do you think it is, Bob, as to why the Patriots seem to shine in bad conditions? And from what I understand, you might have some little tidbits about that from your new book.
Yeah, so in my new book, which is an update from my first book called Total Patriots, you know, I wanted to make it a little bit different. So I added a bunch of different new categories. And one of the categories is, you know, the different weather conditions, the windiest game, the foggiest game, the snowiest game, in this case, the heaviest rain game. And it was interesting that the day after the game, Boomer Esiason was on the local radio station and talked about a game that he played when he was with the Jets against the Patriots in '93, and that is my second rainiest game in Patriots history. So it was pretty cool to Boomer to mention something that's in a section of my book with the weather conditions. But the Patriots have really done well, especially with Brady and the cold. And even though it wasn't so cold, the thing with Belichick is he gets into your mindset. He gets into, one of the things probably that he was talking about in the locker room is that Baltimore is the number one offense, number one defense, number one this, number one that. And he probably get into these guys and said, let's show them that they're not number one and we can just dominate. And I think, these athletes are all the same size and weight, but it's their teamwork and their cohesiveness and their mindset that, we're better than the other team. And they just right off the bat just dominated. And who knows how much Baltimore just didn't want to play in the game. And it's certainly a different condition. We're not playing in front of fans. So,
right.
If you get down mentally and there's no one there to fire you back up, then, you get worn out by the other guy pushing you around. And sometimes you just don't fight back. The Patriots normally do.
Well, you noticed that when the game started that, when the Patriots got the ball, they were going up on a hurry-up offense right off the bat.
Right.
And do you think that was part of their tactic, kind of wear them down a little bit and, keep ball control and wear them down?
Not so much wear them down, but just psych them out. Just kind of we're ready to play. I mean, boom, 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 get ready. And we're not going to take our time. We're here to play ball. And generally, the wearing down happens in the third or fourth quarter sometimes. But
right. Were you there the other night? Were you at the game the other night?
Like that,
I think the running game,
you get a little edge and you just use it for the whole game.
Yeah, I think the running game definitely was a surprise move by them to just to shove it down their throat. But the other thing about it too is what they were saying. What I heard is that they practice. Not what they heard, but what they do. They practice at all kinds of conditions. They have the wet balls. In fact, I've heard, they play in with wet balls. They didn't have any problem. It was almost like it could have been like a dry field the way they were, handling the ball. And one of the two big things you could tell about that game was when they had two major fumbled snaps. One, I think, cost them a first down. The second one was near the end of the game, which just ended any chance for a comeback. And that was a big key. But the other thing to me was a big key, and I talked to Bob about it a little bit too. Is Lamar Jackson is not the smart. He's very, very physically talented. I don't think he's a real heady quarterback because there was one play in that game where they said that he was wide open on the left side of the field, and he was good. Even Al Michael said he could have ran down the field for 50 yards, and what he did instead was throw the short pass.
Right.
Now, if it was Patrick Mahomes there, he would have ran right in, kept running for it. So
he's still only 23 years old. I mean, the kid is still wet behind the ears.
So was Mahomes. Mahomes is
but yeah, were you there the other night, Bob? Were you at the game?
No. I worked 13 years for the NFL at the Patriots home games, but that tour ended at the end of the 2018 season. So, what I did has now been replaced by video, but one of the reasons that this new book came out is that the Patriots Hall of Fame actually hired me to put together all of the stats of all the 1,268 players in 186 different categories of stats into an Excel spreadsheet so that they could put it into an all-time roster. So now there's an interactive display on the third floor of the Patriots place at their Hall of Fame where you can actually look up all the stats of every single player, even if they only played in one game.
When is your name going to be up on that wall?
Well, it's part of the display. I don't know if they acknowledge that all those stats came from me, but it doesn't matter.
Well, they should.
It's there, and all those stats are in this book. So I'm pretty cool just to contribute in any way I can to make that place an amazing place.
Cool. Now, why don't you talk a little bit about some of the differences in your book? I know you mentioned a few about the weather, but give us a little bit of tidbits, maybe a little bit of trivia, or give us a little something that we don't know, which is quite a bit.
What's something new that you found you put in that book that wasn't in your other book?
Yeah.
Well, in the beginning of the book, we talk about all the announcers. So we actually start the first page is all the radio announcers and who the radio announcers were for their tenure there. So, Bob Starr and Fred Cusick, and then Gino, but, Pete Brock was there and John Morris was there. And then in the early 60s, the Patriots weren't on TV that much. That's probably one of the reasons that Gino Cappelletti is probably not in the Pro Football Hall of Fame is no one saw him play. But I have every game that was on TV and who the announcers were and what the score was. So the first 15 or 20 pages has all the games that were on ABC TV or all on NBC or all the ESPN games and Fox games and Monday night games. So you want to go back and look up a Monday night game, you'll see Howard Cosell, but you'll also see John Gruden and Dennis Miller and all the announcers that were there. Cool. And then we break out a little bit of what's the greatest game of every head coach. So if you look at, Parcells was there for 3 years. What was the game that, he did something spectacular and his team won? So the game that I have with the greatest game with Bill Parcells is when he let Drew Bledsoe just throw the ball against the Vikings. All right, we're losing 20-3 at halftime. Go out there and just wing it. And we come back in overtime. And then the Pete Carroll game is when they beat the San Francisco 49ers with Scott Zolak as the quarterback. You can imagine that. And he beat Steve Young and Jerry Rice. And if you were to say, what's the greatest coached game of Bill Belichick, including the playoffs, what would you say is the biggest comeback in history? I'll give you a little hint there.
Yeah, well, it's got to be the Falcons, the Super Bowl where they came back and won. When they were down 28-3, which
28-3, exactly right. So one of the things that I've done with this book and the 20 years of doing this research is actually learning all these different mindset and all this leadership and role playing, and like Michael said, they practice in all different conditions. So I'm now a leadership mindset mentor coach where I go to businesses and executives and say, let's go over every scenario that might come up and let's address it before you're actually in action. Let's role play. Let's communicate. Let's see everyone is on the same page. Everyone's on the same vision. And during that game, even, the Atlanta sidelines, we're up 28-3, but they already knew that Tom Brady, and they started talking about it. Tom Brady's on the other side. We're winning 28-3, but they got Tom Brady. And then you go to the sidelines of the Patriots and you see Julian Edelman, laser focused. We have to hit every single play. And the odds were 1,000-1, 997-1 that they were going to come back. And there was 33 different instances that the Patriots had to do something right or Atlanta had to do something wrong. And all 33 of those scenarios played in the Patriots' favor with time management, with offside, with penalties, you name it. And we hit them all and ended up winning in overtime. So a lot of those lessons are part of what I'm teaching people now.
Well, that catch was like one of the biggest keys of the game. That was almost like the David Tyree catch or any of those other spectacular catches. 2 inches off the ground, Edelman makes the catch like that.
Oh, it's amazing. And, so some of the things that I have in this book is all these obscure little memorable moments where maybe a guy tipped a pass, but someone else intercepted it. So Richard Seymour might have tipped it, but Teddy Bruschi caught it. So, I've got all of those kind of things. Or where offensive linemen caught a pass that was deflected. Or, Troy Brown caught a touchdown pass because it bounced off the other guy's knee. Or for that matter, Julian Edelman's catch that, the ball hit the guy's leg and then bounced up enough so that he could kind of grab it one more time, 3 inches off the ground. So I got a lot of things that, come into play, like tip passes and deflections and Jermaine Wiggins catching the ball that deflected off David Patton just before Jermaine Wiggins went out of bounds. Those kind of boom, boom, boom plays are in this book and listed that way.
Okay. What's the most, Frank, we don't hear Frank. What's the most interesting thing that you discovered and read and doing this book? Like, what was something that really like surprised you, even, or changed? Just wasn't you didn't expect to find it.
Well, I mean, a lot of the stuff that I've been looking at is, these obscure, crazy plays, and I've put some stuff out on Facebook and stuff. And what are some of the memorable moments of going to a game? And the first Monday night game that I went to was the first Monday night game that they had in 1972. There's like 5 stories of that game. But part of it is that, it was the first Monday night game, so people took the afternoon off and started drinking at 3 o'clock. So by the time the game started at 8 o'clock, everyone that's there was probably half in the bag. And in the second quarter, a bunch of guys in the end zone and right around the 10-yard line, the Baltimore Colts, Don Nottingham is running, and he's running into the end zone. And halfway through the play, all the fans start throwing things on the field. So they blow the whistle and stop the play, even though the guy was clearly going to score a touchdown. And they had to eliminate like the first 3 rows of people because they were throwing things and referees were ducking, who knows, bottles, whatever. And Baltimore had to come back, and we stopped them on 3rd down, and they kicked the field goal. They ended up winning the game. But, crazy fan things like that, maybe we just throw it out there and say, later that night, they had over 250 people arrested, and they actually ran out of jail space. So they just, handcuffed them to the fence and just threw a towel over them or a blanket over them for a couple hours until they figured out where to put them.
Wow.
So it was a war zone back in the 70s with going to Schaefer Stadium back then.
How long did it take you to put this book together, Bob?
Well, in 2016 is when the Patriots came to me and said, we want to do this interactive roster and update all the information from the first book, and then put all this information in different computer programs. So probably another couple thousand hours over the last 3 years to put this together. And then once I had it, just to kind of edit it and make it sing. So there's all kind of top 10 lists and, every onside kick recovery and every 2-point conversion. And for that matter, every unsuccessful 2-point conversion, all those kind of fun stuff is in there. And then we got nicknames and we got guys that were in football movies, Doug Flutie was in a movie called Second String, and Joe Cap was in a couple of movies. So there's a little tidbits here and there and different stories, from Mike Superfoot Walker, who was a soccer player and a bricklayer in England and ends up winning a contest and comes over to become a kicker for the Patriots. It was a contest sponsored by British Airways in 1971, and a radio station here in Boston sponsored it to find a kicker to replace Gino Cappelletti at the end of his career. And we wanted a soccer-style kicker because that was the thing back then with Pete Gogolak and Jan Stenerud and that kind of stuff. So it's, a bunch of other people are helping the team back in the 70s to try to develop a team. And he only played a couple of games, but he stuck here and met his wife, and he's been here ever since.
Cool. Now, what's the the approval process? Let's say that you get all of your statistics, you get all of your information, and then you put it all together. What's the the chain of command to who has to sign off on that, or do they fact check it, or what's the process of signing off on that? Does it go up the Patriots ladder all the way to Kraft, or is Belichick, or any idea what the approval process is?
Well, while I was working in the press room for the Patriots home games, I would give them their information and we would go back and forth. So they have Elias Sports Bureau, and then there's Pro Football Reference, and there's other websites that other people that I've worked with to edit this. But most of my information is information that I've collected and from former statisticians of the teams or the media guides or places like that. So I've had a variety of different people on my team to make sure that everything I have is accurate.
Right. But as far as once you get all that information, does that have to go and meet Bob Kraft's approval? No, it's all up to your publisher at that point?
Exactly right. Yep.
Okay. Just curious how that went.
Do you have, So I was just curious, do you have any info about, I mean, the worst game I think I ever saw the Patriots play was when they got destroyed by the Bears in the Super Bowl with Tony Eason starting at quarterback.
Right.
Do you have any information about that or why he was actually in the game, ex-quarterback? I mean, I know he played well, but I mean, the way he just like got scared, it just like let me out of here. I don't want to be here.
Yeah, he was 0 for 7. And so I talked to Raymond Berry about that a little bit and some of the players, and they really wanted to come out. The only loss that the Bears had that year was against Marino. And Marino had, the quick wrist and the quick release and the tremendous wide receivers. So they figured that, with Eason throwing the ball, perhaps we could offset their rush. But it didn't work. I mean, we tried it. We couldn't obviously run the ball. I think we ended up with -2 yards rushing the whole game. So rushing was out, and we had to throw the ball. And even with just trying to get rid of it, I mean, that first pass to Stanley Morgan, after they recovered the fumble, was tipped by Singletary, and we kicked a field goal, and we're winning 3-0. But once he realized that he couldn't do the slant patterns, he couldn't get rid of it, and then of course Lynn Dawson breaks his leg in the first series, and so now we don't have a tight end to throw to. He just gave up, and then by that time, no one was really going to beat the Bears. They just were coming in all cylinders and loaded for bear. And I think we were tired to win 3 road games, and
Right.
and to go out there.
Yeah.
That took over. Patriots were the first team to win 3 road games and make the Super Bowl. And of course, the drug issue too, that come later, was discovered with probably half the team was on cocaine that game. So that didn't help either. They were so excited to be there that they had to do drugs.
Wow.
What?
So the mind wasn't there, and the effort wasn't there, and it was over.
I have to interject right here because I just got a notice that we are running out of time.
Yes.
So let me ask a quick one to kind of wrap it up a little bit before we close. Bob, are the Patriots going to make the playoffs this year?
I don't think so. Right now, even if they win out, they got maybe a 60% chance. If they go, 6-2 or whatever it takes to finish out the season, there's still a 50-50 chance. I think, they were psyched to beat this Baltimore team because Baltimore had come in with some pedigree and will probably win a few more games, but there's so many other teams ahead of them. It's going to be tough and go, and I'm saying no, they're not going to make the playoffs.
Mikey?
I don't think so either. I think they're probably going to finish 8-8. I think they might just finish out of it. And even if they finish 9-7, I think Bob's right. I think they're not going to make it. There's going to be too many teams ahead of them too.
Yeah, I tend to agree. But Bob, as I mentioned before, that one of the enemies of the show is time.
Yeah.
And before we wrap up here, I think Mikey and you and I have a couple of people to thank along the way for our 350th show.
Especially,
and one person we have to recognize right off the bat is our esteemed director, Roxanne Morse, who has moved on to bigger and better things and is going to be with us occasionally. But we would not have been here without Roxanne Morse.
That's right, absolutely. And
also we have to thank Lorene Kubak, who has been admirable in filling in for Roxanne and learning the ropes from Roxanne. And obviously we have to thank everybody at SMAC.
We have to thank Antonio De Cesare.
And Antonio.
Yeah, he was here, but he was a big contributor. And we want to thank everybody at SMAC, Dave Young, Michael Hammond, CJ Mullen. So,
and even Jeff Pickett, who brought us along the way, the Pickett Quicket. And Bob, we want to thank you. You have been a repeat offender many times on our show, and it's guys like you who make our show successful.
That's
so
right.
Why don't you wrap it up a little bit with your book and anything you want to say, Bobby?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I appreciate all the support that I get from you guys and the love and the friendship and all the best to Roxanne. I've met her numerous times. She's a sweetheart, and all the best to her. So Relive Patriots History. You can get it on Amazon, eBay. You want to get an autographed copy from me, I'm local. Go to Bob the Statman on Twitter, Bob the Statman. And if you need any kind of one-on-one counseling just to deal with any kind of stress and anxiety, by all means, I'll help you out and get your alignment in with the vision of what your purpose is in life. So we're all here to help each other and make an impact in people's lives. And I really appreciate being on your show numerous times, and we hope to do some more in the future.
And let's not forget your other couple of books, man. You've got some other definitive books too, so they can also find those on through you as well.
Exactly right. And get over to the Patriots Hall of Fame and check out the all-time roster. And my first book, Total Patriots, is behind glass there. It's 800 pages. This one here was only 464. And this one is probably the most intense book on any football team, or for that matter, any sports team ever. There's probably 20,000 hours of research in this book, and I've enjoyed probably 90% of it. Some of it was a little tedious, but you bring it out, you bring joy to people, and you relive some of the memories of the last 60 years in this book. Hope you enjoy it.
Well, I tell you, the copies that the two books that I have of yours, they have been passed around many times, and they've been very enjoyable to read. I went through the entire book. I know Mike did, and I passed it around to many of my football friends. So, folks, if you want to know anything Patriots, Bob's your guy, and his books are the source. So, Mikey, why don't you wrap it up, kid?
Yeah, so from Patriot Nation and for Bob Hyldburg, I'm Mike Wigdor.
I am Frank Walsh. And we will see you down the road.
Go Pats. Thanks, guys.